Look at the baby. Look at the baby. It's a baby. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Motley Show, where we take one of the bigger stories out of news and politics each week, pull it out of the echo chamber, see what's really going on, and see why should we care. Now, last night was the third GOP debate, this time held on CNBC, so it was supposed to focus on financial issues, because that's what CNBC is all about. But then again, judging by some of the responses from some of the candidates, you might think that this was just an all-out attack on them, and it was personal from the get-go. But we'll get into that. Let's go with the headline for the evening, and that was, it was Rubio's round. And that's the way it seems to happen every time the presidential primaries come around. These debates tend to go from one person to the next, to the next, to the next. The first round evidently went to Carly Fiorina because she moved up from the junior table to the big table. The second round went to Ben Carson because he moved up in a lot of polls and in fact overtook Donald Trump in some of them. And the third round, at least in my opinion, went to Senator Marco Rubio from Florida. And why did he win? The seemingly wide perception that he won comes from the fact that he actually pivoted off of numerous questions, answers that were very well rehearsed, very well canned. He didn't slip up. He played off the cuff when he needed to, and he played straight when he had to. He also played to the crowd. His main attack of the night, and the thing that made a lot of people say that he won, was because when he was attacked about his Senate attendance record right now. The fact is, he's still a senator from Florida, and there are numerous votes that he's missing because he's on the campaign trail. Now that also goes for other senators that are currently up there. I don't know how many votes Rand Paul has missed, or how many votes Senator Cruz has missed, but that didn't seem to matter to the Florida newspaper that reported in the op-ed page that they wanted Marco Rubio to actually give his Senate seat away, to retire from that post because he's not showing up for the votes and he's not doing the job of being a senator from Florida. But he was already used to taking on that attack, but then those same words came from Jeb Bush, which also brought up an interesting dynamic because Jeb Bush and Marco Rubio are kind of like protege and master. Jeb has been treating Rubio as a student coming up, but of course Rubio's got the Tea Party cred because he came up during that wave, but he's also got the establishment help because he's under people like Bush, and he's connected to some of the bigger senators like McCain and others that helped make the Gang of Eight bill. But when Jeb took this opening and went after Marco Rubio saying, look, when you came on as senator, when you got hired, it was a 6-year position and you should be doing your job. You can do both. You can be a candidate and go on the campaign trail and go back for the votes. And Rubio was ready for this. He had this canned and in the bag. He turned and faced Bush and said, well, that's funny. I know that you've been going around the country right now campaigning and you say you're modeling your campaign after John McCain, but yet John McCain missed just as many votes as I am, and you didn't say anything. The only reason you're attacking me now is because someone else convinced you that that's going to be in your interest because your poll numbers are sagging. And honestly, that was it. Jeb Bush was done. He never recovered from that for the rest of the night. He had a overall incredibly weak night, and it only was made worse by that particular exchange. And out of all the candidates, that was definitely the big swing. Now, some people are saying Cruz won the night because Cruz took a big swing at the media in general. He attacked the fact that the first round of questions seemed very combative, and I agree, they were. But that doesn't mean they were asked with malicious intent. Cruz went on to basically say that these debates were a sham because everybody knows that the moderators that are here at CNBC all have a liberal bias. They're attacking us, trying to make us look stupid because these particular people, these moderators, are never going to vote in a Republican primary. So basically, we should ignore all their questions and fill our allotted time with whatever it is that we want to talk about. Now, I will agree with Cruz on the very first question of the night. John Harwood asked a question of Donald Trump, and he was asking Donald Trump about his tax plan, and he reported that an unbiased organization had already scored that plan and saying that it would add $11 trillion to the debt. But yet Trump says it's going to pay for itself. And then he asked him, is this a comic book candidacy? Now, it's not necessarily the meanest thing anyone's ever said, but yes, it's a little disrespectful, especially for the guy that's in the lead in some polls still. And he could have just said, is this realistic? But he said comic book, and maybe it was just a Freudian slip of the fact that that's what so many people in the country are thinking, that Donald Trump is basically a comic book right now. But Trump responded saying that he thought the question was nasty, and from that point on, it didn't matter what the questions were, they were all mean. Not only to him, but to everybody. But Cruz pointed back to the Democratic debate that was on CNN, and Anderson Cooper moderated, and he said that that was just a fawning show of support for every one of those candidates, and there was all softball questions, and I think he said, which one of you is the handsomest? But that is a flat out lie. Anderson Cooper attacked every person on stage from the get-go. And in fact, mostly it was that first round of questioning that was incredibly hard. He attacked every single person on stage. And the reason why he did it, and the reason why the moderators did it on CNBC, is because they want to be seen as actual journalists. They don't want to be seen as people who are just setting up softball questions so that the candidates can basically just push out all their talking points. These debates are supposed to be substantive. They're supposed to actually be a clash of ideas to make people flush out what will work and what won't. But the candidates seem to think that this is just a way for them to get up and do their stump speech, which is incorrect. And if they think every one of these is supposed to be painted so they can just sit back and look great, then honestly, don't show up. Just make a campaign video. Now, back to Rubio. So his dissection of Jeb Bush was great, and that was his best part of the night. But later on, he had a couple stumbling blocks. Not enough to take him down from being the quote-unquote winner of the night, but still, he brought up the recent testifying of Hillary Clinton in front of the Benghazi Select Committee, and used it as this idea of saying, look, she admitted that she was a liar. She admitted that she lied to the American people about what was causing the attack, whether it was a protest over a video or an organized attack. And he said this was the smoking gun, and it proved that she was a liar and that she's not good enough to be president. And the crowd went wild, because these are all GOP supporters and this is exactly what they wanted to hear. But fact checkers immediately went after this, saying, no, it didn't prove anything. She routinely said throughout that hearing that there was piecemeal information, and when she wrote one thing and then said another thing later, it was because information was changing. It was in flux. And then Rubio also attacked the idea that the media said that that was the best week for Hillary Clinton's campaign because they're all covering for her. Sorry, Rubio, they're not covering for her. That honestly was the best week of her campaign. She went in there in front of a majority Republican committee and walked out without a scratch on her. That made her look presidential. It made her look like she could take the slings and arrows from anyone. So while that committee tried to do a bunch of damage to her, they didn't. And because they didn't, she walked out bigger and stronger than she went in. I know that's not what they wanted to happen, but it was the result. And then Rubio also went after the tax center, which scored his plan and said it gives more benefits to the rich than it does to the middle class. Now, admittedly, it gives benefits to both, but what the moderator was talking about was, why is it that you say you're supportive of the middle class and the poor people, kind of going back to where you came from, but yet your plan gives the biggest benefit to the very rich? And instead of defending his plan, he just said the tax center was flat out wrong. These are guys that do this for a living. That's all they do, is look at taxes and tax plans. My bet is I'm gonna vote with them. If they say that you're giving a bigger benefit to the rich, I'm gonna agree with them. Next biggest of the night may be Senator Ted Cruz, and it probably comes from what they've been referring to as the Cruz Missile, which is his first opening statement and just attacking the media hardcore. It's gonna give him something great to put in the next campaign email to get donations from. It was a good shot for him. It's honestly utter but it doesn't matter. He's just throwing red meat. And in terms of his biggest wacky thing of the evening was late in the debate when he said he wanted to go back to the gold standard, which we haven't been on since the 1930s, and pretty much every economist out there says is an absolutely insane plan. But hey, Cruz has never been known to exactly go with the flow. Oh, and seriously, in all the candidates out there, please, in any of the next debates, if I hear anybody say, I'm the only one on this stage, ... it's the most repeated, annoying, and just pathetic quote from anyone. Now, for the other two big frontrunners right now, Carson and Trump, they didn't exactly have terrible nights, but they also didn't have breakout nights either. They kind of got lost. Especially Trump. It seemed like he barely spoke at all. And when he did speak during one portion of the debate, they asked him about the fact that he's gone bankrupt 4 times. He took 4 of his hotels in Atlantic City into bankruptcy. He just went on to say that basically everyone in Atlantic City went into bankruptcy. And of course he did it because it worked for him. He used the system to work for him, and that makes him a smart businessman, which makes him a good idea for president. And Trump's worst point of the night was when one of the moderators asked him about the fact that he had called Senator Marco Rubio Mark Zuckerberg's personal senator, because the fact that both of them support certain types of visas for foreigners to come over and work. Now, the moderator pointedly asked Trump about whether or not he supported those visas, and whether he stood by the idea that saying that basically Senator Rubio was in Zuckerberg's pocket. Now, Trump just said, no, that's not true. I have total respect for Mark Zuckerberg. We're great friends, whatever. And I never said that about Marco Rubio. And the moderator was like, well, I have that in my notes. Where did I get that from? And he said, I don't know. You guys write this stuff. And the crowd went wild because, again, it was attacking the media. It was basically saying, you're making stuff up to make me look bad. But 10 minutes later, when they came back from commercial, that moderator came right back and said, welcome back to the debate. And before we go any farther, I just wanted to say I looked in my notes and I did some research and I found out where I saw the quote saying that you called Marco Rubio Zuckerberg's personal senator. It was on your website. debate. Boom! Mwah! Moderators 1, Trump 0. Honestly, Trump doesn't even know what's written on his website, probably because he didn't write any of it. And as for Carson, he currently is the frontrunner in some of the polls, but I think what's coming out right now is the fact that he has such a huge lack of energy. He's so soft-spoken, and in many cases that can be a good thing, but when he's surrounded by people who are being very stringent about their beliefs, very vocal about their plans, and very almost boisterous about their patriotism, his low energy just comes off as somewhat disinterested. And he only furthered that when during the very first question asked to all the candidates about what would be their weakness, he said his weakness is he never saw himself as president until hundreds of thousands of people asked him to be. But it doesn't matter whether now you see yourself as president, you just admitted you didn't really see yourself in the job. And out of everything you could have said, that's probably the worst. But then because he's in the medical industry and he's a doctor, he was asked about the recent drug story about the CEO of a drug company that bought the rights to a particular drug and then took that drug from a few dollars a pill to $750 a pill, causing it to realistically price out of anyone's availability. Now the internet went nuts and eventually the guy dropped the price back down, and another company came in saying they could make a generic of the same thing and sell it for $1. But the question was posed to Carson, what should we do about drug companies that are profiteering off of life-saving drugs? What would be the fix to this? And Carson just kind of dodged the question and then in a roundabout way blamed regulation, saying we have to remove regulation from this and that will solve that. But that seems completely contrary to what happened. The reason why the company could do this is because there is no regulation. There's no stopping a company from buying the rights to a particular drug and then pricing it to whatever the hell they want. Now everyone else had pretty much a mediocre night. Christie looked strong in a number of places and he's still the only one who looks directly at the camera, basically trying to talk to the voters. But I don't know if that's going to pull him out of the single digits. He might get there if Trump and Carson and Fiorina all begin to fall. If the outsiders fall, it'll probably be Rubio and Christie that rise up. Maybe Kasich, but I don't know. I think he's a bit far off for the Republican base right now. I could see independents liking him, and I could see some right-leaning Democrats liking him, but I can't see the Republican base coalescing around John Kasich. And as for Fiorina, she just speechified every time she got the microphone. She almost looked too rehearsed, and she went on to quote this particular figure of that 92% of all jobs lost in Obama's first 3 years were women. So that makes the Obama presidency terrible for women, and she was going to be better about that. And that's an old statistic. It's not something she figured out, and back when it was originally brought up, it was debunked then. The fact of the matter is when Obama came into office, the job market was hemorrhaging 800,000 jobs a month, and she's basically saying she's going to blame him for all of those jobs. But as you could see, if you look at the chart, the job market actually swung up right after he took the office. He was able to turn the economy around. So if you're blaming him for the 92%, which is actually an incorrect number to begin with, they're not his fault. That was the economy going before he ever got in there. You can blame Bush or you can blame Clinton. Either one's probably correct. And lastly, there was Rand Paul and Mike Huckabee. Meh. The only thing interesting there was Rand Paul said he was going to run back to Washington the very next day to filibuster the 2-year debt deal that Congress is looking to pass. So it might come down to the fact that if we have a government shutdown, it won't be Cruz running it this time, it'll be Rand Paul, but we'll see if he can actually stop it. So here's a little chart of how I think everyone did. Again, it's always just my opinion, but this is the effect that I see coming out of this. And I heard on the radio today that Carson is upset with how the debate ran, that he thought it was too combative. But I don't know, to me, I actually like it when the moderators call out the candidates on their whether it be Republicans or Democrats. If you said it and you get called out on it, don't yell at the moderator for bringing it up. But he says he's going to reach out to all the other candidacies and see if they can agree to force the rest of the debates on the list to change their format, to make it basically easier for them. They want longer times to speak, 5 minutes each, maybe 4 minutes each, so that they can give a long, detailed answer. Problem is, it probably won't work for ratings, which it shouldn't matter, but also everyone's going to go up there and just give speeches. That's not really a debate. My opinion on how to fix the debates right now, remove the audience. Too many candidates on both sides are pandering to the audience they're in front of. They're saying huge bombastic lines to try to get everyone to applaud, and then they can look like the winner. They can bask in the glow. But if nobody's there, they'll have to talk about something real. They'll have to talk about their actual plans because there's no applause. There's no gloating in front of an adoring crowd. That's the way to fix the debates. So thanks for watching another episode of the Motley's Do Show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, or you want to subscribe to watching the daily vlogs that I do, you can do either of those here. You can also like, favorite, or share this video with anyone you think wants to jump in the discussion. Stay tuned for next week, and as always, here are the kids.
Yeah. Oh, baby, baby. Come here. Come here. Honey, don't pick them up, Logan. You can sit with them and talk to them.
Oh. Shelos. These are Shelos. They're nice and fine.
Are really nice and fine? Oh, how long have those been under there? Are you talking to your brother?
I know, ma'am. Come here, William. Come here, William. Come here, William.
He's getting you in the face.
His support for women and what they need for family time and paid family leave has been notoriously low. So the idea that he's some sort of champion now leaves people a bit confused. So here's the new list. Motivational Mondays, Top 10 Tuesdays, Wondrous Wednesdays, Thankful Thursdays, and Fanboy Friday.